It's time for another episode of Discipleship today. My name is Bob Benson. I'm the pastor of Christ Lutheran Church in Greenhurst. We've been working through the book of Timothy as a discipleship text because Paul was writing to Timothy, kind of laying out a discipleship relationship that he had had with Timothy. And we're going to look at chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. I'm going to read it in the English Standard Version. The saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to the office of overseer, he desires a noble task. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own household well, and with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may become puffed up with conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders, so that he may not fall into disgrace, into the snare of the devil. This section of Scripture, you're going to hear a lot of people fight about this, but this is Paul laying out what he believes is the great order for the church. To be the office of overseer there, the original language word for that is episcopi. It's where the Episcopal Church gets the whole idea of the holy episcopate, and I don't quite understand all of that theology. But it says here he desires a noble task. So to be a pastor of a church, and that's really what that term means. And he lays out some qualifications: above reproach, not condemnable, the husband of one wife. And I hear a lot of people arguing about that. When plain sense makes sense, we seek no other sense. And then the plain sense of that is the husband of one wife, not divorced, not a woman, the husband of one wife. It's very clear there. Sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, and able to teach. Not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. My next-door neighbor quite often says there's a lot of money in the God business, and he's right. We've seen all sorts of televangelists and preachers make a lot of money from selling God to people, and it's not about the money. As a matter of fact, most pastors around can tell you that it's not about the money. If you figure out their hourly wage, they don't make a lot of money. He must manage his own household well, with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. It's not that you have perfect children, because there's none of us that have perfect children, but it is about being able to rule your household well. And that's what he says in the next line. If you don't know how to maintain your own household, how will you care for God's church? We work through teachable moments, especially with our kids. There are things that we can teach them and times that we can teach them where they make a real impact, and we really try to do that. Must not be a recent convert. The problem there is all of a sudden you put a recent convert into leadership role, and there's some things that can happen there. You can become self-righteous. You can become thinking that you're all that, and that's where you fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders. We have to be well thought of in the world. That means we have to interact with the world. That means we have to have a testimony with people around us, with our friends, with our neighbors. Are we salt and light where God's put us? And I think that's an interesting thing. We have to be attractively winsome to people, even outside of the church. And how is it that we do that? And that's something that each of us are called differently and gifted differently to engage in kingdom work. How do we develop those giftings? How do we use those traits for furthering the kingdom? So, and we don't want to fall into disgrace. And that's a line that a lot of people have jumped over. It's not that we don't make mistakes, but when we do make a mistake, we have a heart of David. that we confess that mistake. We apologize to people and we try and make it right. I could tell you, I know a bunch of pastors, and I don't know any perfect pastors. And I fall into that group. I make mistakes, but it's never my intent to hurt anybody. Have people been hurt by me? Yes, they've been hurt by me. And I try and apologize, and we try and move on from there. And part of repenting is learning not to do that same thing again. They say that a smart man learns from his mistakes. A wise man learns from others' mistakes. So there's a difference between being smart and being wise. We don't want to fall into the snare of the devil. I think of all the pastors that I know that have fallen and the ramifications of that. Not that God can't still use them, but we don't want to do kingdom damage. And that's the thing. If we really thought about the damage it does to the kingdom and it does to people in the kingdom, would we change our behaviors? And I think we would. So as we look at 1 Timothy 3, the first 7 verses, there's a lot of application for us. One interpretation, many applications. So for Discipleship Today, my name is Bob Benson. Thank you for taking the time to watch.